Desiree Gazetta, and I post as Desbot on the Nerd Element. I'm a blogger there. And please go ahead and introduce yourselves. We'll start with Dr. Whitenack.
Yeah, my name is Lisa Whitenack, and I am an associate professor of biology and geology at Allegheny College, which is about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh for those who are in the U.S.
And I'm Dr. David Shiffman. I am a faculty research associate at Arizona State University based at the Washington, D.C. campus.
Great. So before we discuss the study, I'd like to know for our audience how each of you got into studying sharks. We'll start with Dr. Shiffman.
Sure. I feel like most kids go through a shark thing or a dinosaur thing at some point in their childhoods, and I just really never grew out of mine. I grew up in Pittsburgh, pretty far from the ocean, but this is what I've wanted to do as long as my family can remember. And they've always been very supportive, but I think they thought I was going to grow out of it one day, and I didn't.
And then Lisa said I could call you Lisa, so Lisa, please.
You can call me David too. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think, it's kind of similar. I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid. I never outgrew them, but I also really liked sharks. And I have a copy downstairs. I'm at home right now of the Reader's Digest Guide to North American Wildlife. And I used to look at that all the time growing up. It was my grandmother's, and the pages on sharks are really dog-eared. So I spent a lot of time looking at those. And I was actually planning on being a high school teacher, high school chemistry teacher. And then I took a history of life class and went, holy cow, I can major in dinosaurs. And so I do a lot of paleobiology of sharks. And so that's the direction I ended up heading in. I didn't know what I was going to do with my geology degree. And my advisor was a starfish paleontologist, sea star paleontologist. I'd be very mad if I said starfish. And he handed me a box. He's like, you like things with backbones. Look at these shark teeth that I found with this 320 million year old starfish, sea star. And it's an old habit. And that was it. That off I went.
Just so you know, I obviously I'm a writer. I'm not a shark scientist. I do love sharks. That's why I got interested in Shark Week. As a child, I was, of course, like a lot of children who weren't supposed to see Jaws, traumatized by Jaws. But instead of staying afraid of it, I decided to go find out everything I could. So I read all the books, and I still enjoy a good shark movie because I know it's fantasy. But I loved Shark Week. And I remember in the beginning, Shark Week was a lot about hunting sharks, and sharks are dangerous. And at some point, I don't remember how many years ago, they pivoted toward more conservation and education, I thought. And I also, I'm the shark geek among my friends. So every summer during Shark Week, I do what's called a random shark fact, an RSF, on my Facebook timeline. I started doing it on Twitter last year, where I just watch all the Shark Week specials, and something randomly will hit me that seems like an interesting fact, and then I'll share it. And then I looked at your study, and I looked at your timelines, and I found out that maybe some of those facts aren't so factual after all. So I'll everybody in advance that if I ever shared anything that wasn't an actual shark expert fact. But I mean, things like ampullae of Lorenzini and those kind of things I think are pretty safe. So, and reverse attacks, which is my favorite. So let's talk about Shark Week. What prompted your study? Tell everyone about your study.
Yeah, so it was actually inspired by my students in part. I teach a first-year seminar called Sharks and Recreation, and it's all about sharks and pop culture. And if you're going to talk about sharks and pop culture, you need to talk about Shark Week. And David was visiting my class as a guest, and we were kind of said, we should do something with this. We've been, we being shark scientists at large, and also the media has been criticizing Shark Week for some time, calling them out on fear mongering and on some of the being a little loose with the facts sometimes, issues with representation of their experts, whether they're actual experts or not, and also seeing a whole lot of white men presented as experts. But we haven't really had a chance to put numbers behind it. So that's what we spent the last year and a half doing. It was a coincidence that we started it right before the pandemic and were able to watch a lot of Shark Week while, staying home and things like that. And so that was how we kind of got started on this project.
And I have been grousing about this stuff on social media for a long time. There is my all-time favorite media coverage of me was Vox a few years ago picked a couple of my tweets from throughout Shark Week, and the title of the article is "Watch as Shark Week Drives This Scientist Insane."
I saw that.
I've also been, the Tampa Bay Times called me Shark Week's biggest critic. So there have been, the complaints here are not new. What's new is having data to show that, yes, it really is that bad.
Now, I believe you did post on Twitter a link to your, was it a 2015 article that you had criticizing?
Yes, an essay in Vox. I've written about Shark Week a lot. It occupies entirely too many of my brain cells, but that was an essay about why I still get engaged with it and take advantage of the temporary increase in public paying attention to sharks, even though so much of it is at best nonsense.
Oh God, that hurts my heart. Can you tell us what you mean when you talk about content and discourse analysis, so people know the methodology?
Yeah, so basically we watched a lot of TV, but we did it in a way that we were recording what we were seeing and actually to put some numbers behind things. So we had a series of questions that that reflected things we wanted to keep track of. So where were these filming, who was being featured, and how were they being referred to on screen? What species were we seeing? What types of research were we seeing? What kind of messaging were we seeing? Were the sharks being portrayed negatively? Are they killing, hunting people, and so forth? Was there positive messaging? Was there conservation messaging? And things like that. And then we basically counted up our data and compiled the numbers. We also looked at all of the titles for all 230 some odd episodes that have aired over the 32 years. And there are databases that look at English words and tell you how they kind of are perceived by people positively, negatively, emotion, anger, etc. And so we use that to analyze the titles. And then we also did some work specifically around the experts, looking at how many scientific publications do they have, which is a pretty standard measure for being an expert in a field,
right.
for the scientific fields. But also, we know that there are other ways to be experts and not be publishing. So doing reports for, say, NOAA, for the government, or presenting at conferences and things like that. So we cast a pretty wide net. And then we also look for biographies of the folks that are featured to find out, what pronouns are they using and things like that. So we really did throw a pretty a wide array of questions at this to really try and dig down and figure out what was going on with Shark Week over these 32 years.
At its heart, the content analysis aspect of this is as simple as counting, but it's having hard quantitative data that when a great white shark swims across the screen and they say great white shark, we say this episode had great white sharks. When Dr. So-and-so appears and they say Dr. So-and-so, an eminent marine biologist, we record one sighting of Dr. So-and-so, eminent marine biologist. Discourse analysis is a little trickier. And that's, how are things framed? How are things presented? Is it saying sharks are good? Is it saying sharks are scary and bad? Or did they talk about conservation? What did they say? And so the mix of the two is used to really quantify how ideas are discussed. I've done versions of this for things like, how is shark conservation discussed in the news? I have a couple other similar studies that are in review now. So it's an established method in the interdisciplinary science world that's being newly applied to sort of public science education, public perception of conservation type issues.
And this is,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is one of the great things about the team of folks that we had working on this, is that we all do something a little bit different, and we really complemented each other's skills very well. So I work on, like I said, paleobiology, and I had one of my undergraduates working on watching the shows and developing the methods. Catherine McDonald does a lot of really great stuff with media and also shark science, just like David does. He's a social scientist and a natural scientist. Steve Kajura does a lot of really wonderful work out in the field as well. And so with all of us kind of putting our brains together, and then Julia, Catherine's student, did amazing work with a lot of the graphics and stuff we had in addition to the content analysis.
Having to watch
too.
hundreds of hours of this trash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and so, right, we all, like I said, we all had our own strengths, and I think that really helped us think broadly about this and be able to hit all these different areas.
What was your most surprising finding, if you have one, or 2 or 3 maybe, I don't know.
I'll say for mine, one of the most surprising ones was just how many shark species have been featured over the 32 years. I was not expecting that to be in the 70s. I think we were at 79?
79, something like
79.
that.
Yeah. My iPad, I had the number up. My iPad went off. It's been a really long day. But yeah, we 79 different shark species over the 32 years. I thought for sure we'd be somewhere in the 30s. And a lot of them are one-offs, but It was a huge surprise to, because we see so many white sharks and bull sharks and tiger sharks and hammerheads that kind of overshadows everything. When you have 5 shows about white sharks, you kind of forget that there was a dogfish that was snuck in there. So that was definitely,
say a Greenland shark, finally.
Yeah.
Funny now. Tell me this is true, that they can live like hundreds of years. That's okay, good. Got that one right.
Isn't that wild? This is my favorite thing about Greenland sharks, and it's my go-to. I have 10 seconds to amaze someone about sharks. Fact, at cocktail parties and stuff. Remember leaving the house to go to cocktail parties? Greenland sharks eat polar bears. Isn't that bananas? The largest land predator in the world, and Greenland sharks eat them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And what eats the Greenland shark? Nothing, right? Or does the orca get
Not much when they're full grown.
They're pretty big.
Yeah.
What was your most surprising finding, Dr. Shiffman? Excuse me, David. Sorry.
Well, I'd seen a lot of Shark Week. I may be the only person who's watched all of it because I've been keeping detailed records on trends and nonsense over the years. So I would say there was a lot of what surprised me had to do with just, it really is that bad. And it's not just whatever the opposite of rose-colored glasses is, looking back on something you didn't like. But it showed what's really striking here is that there is some Shark Week programming that is science-based, that does show appropriate experts, that does show interesting species and interesting places and stories that haven't been told before. But it's like not very much. Right. Certainly the majority of it is the same people going swimming with great whites in Mexico and engaging in borderline wildlife harassment, and for reasons that are never made especially clear.
Right. Same group of specialists that you see year to year. And, as a casual, not casual, because I'm a little more than a casual viewer of Shark Week. There are personalities I enjoy. Like this person is, I won't go into names, but, this person is very enthusiastic and seems to really love the sharks. And this person seems very intelligent. And I also know that they have to market it. So you bring a guy like Shaq on, or you bring Mike Tyson. We'll get into the Mike thing in a second.
Oh, geez.
Or you bring on, Tiffany Haddish. Actually, I like that special. She just seemed so into it, and she's so funny. So to me, that's the kind of thing that makes it more accessible to someone who's maybe not as into sharks and will want to know more because their favorite comedian liked or handled the shark. What would you feel was the most alarming finding?
Yeah, the diversity statistics of presented experts is pretty alarming, given how literally every other institution in the entire world is having these discussions about the importance of representation these past few years. And Shark Week is showing 96% white people when they're going to, when half of the shows take place in South Africa or Mexico or the Bahamas. Lisa, are you frozen there, or are you just shocked? Uh-oh. We may have lost
Frozen?
Lisa.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going, and then hopefully she'll come back. Oh, there she comes.
Okay, we're back.
Yay!
My internet drops out from time to time.
It's okay.
It was a quick recovery.
Yep.
We were talking about what was the most alarming finding, and for David, it was the lack of diversity.
And you watch the shows, and you certainly get the sort of background in the back of your mind impression that you have to be a white guy in pretty good physical shape,
Yep.
be a shark scientist, and but to have the numbers behind it was just wild. We just had our professional society, the Elias Brank Society, just had our annual business meeting yesterday, and 60% of the members of the world's largest professional society focusing on sharks and rays are women. Last year's Shark Week specials, the promo material that I was sent mentioned 0 names of women scientists.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's definitely not good. Because one of the things that really shocked me was that statistic about the non-experts named Mike, who outnumber any woman featured for any position.
Yeah, that's for people who have appeared in more than 5 episodes. There are more people who are not scientists, who are white guys named Mike, than there are women.
That's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy. What can viewers do to help get them to have women and people of color that actually do shark studies be featured on Shark Week?
I mean, I think one of the things they can do is vote with the remotes, right? I mean, the bottom line is if people aren't watching shows with certain hosts or whatever, and I'm not saying like pick on a particular host, but right, if the episodes that do feature underrepresented folks, gain more viewers, that might prompt Discovery to actually, reach out to more folks. Okay, so I was saying, my students do this underloved shark project, and where we find a shark that hasn't been featured on Shark Week very much, and my students have to write a paper about it and do a couple other things. But one of the things they have to do is write a letter to the Discovery Channel person in charge of programming Shark Week. And with their permission, I send all these letters, and we have never heard back from them. They get a big packet of 15 letters. We've done this the last 2 years, and I've never heard from them. So I don't know how receptive they would be to people actually reaching out. I think you might have to somehow have to hit them in the pocketbook, so to speak.
Now, I saw that you were on the Megalodon Fact or Fiction special.
I was.
And which was a response to the criticism they received for the fake Megalodon documentary, I think.
Yeah. Yes, and also made by the same people that made the fake Megalodon documentary, or the same production company, if I remember correctly.
Okay, that I didn't know. So how do you feel you were able to get any messaging about, the actual facts versus the fiction that they wanted us to believe out in that special, or was it edited? Was it edited the way you preferred?
So I was really worried about that, but I actually had a wonderful experience doing that. I was worried that my words would be taken out of context because we have seen that on Discovery Channel before. But they didn't. They actually, they showed, they wanted us to debunk specific parts of the documentary, and they let us riff on that. And I think my favorite one of mine that they used was when I was complaining about the really fake dead whale on the beach, and kind of, because I work, as a paleobiologist, and I do a lot of biomechanics, which means I rarely work with live sharks. I tend to work with museum specimens and jaws and things like that, and teach anatomy. So there's a lot of dead things that I work with. So I kind of went off on that, and they ended up putting the whole rant in, and it was really funny because then they animated all these seagulls on top of the whale, and it was fantastic. So I actually was extremely pleased with how that went. I will say, the questions haven't stopped, though, in terms of whether Megalodon is still living out there. I just So everyone knows it is not. It's been extinct for over 2 million years.
Yes.
I don't know how to be more clear about that. I post it on Twitter every Shark Week. Like, this is your annual reminder. This is super dead. But yeah, so I still, that original one in 2013, was Megalodon, the monster shark lives. I had never been asked about Megalodon still existing until that actually aired. And since then, even with going on the show, in 2018, I guess that was, for Fact versus Fiction, I still get asked. It doesn't matter. It's 3-year-olds, it's 80-year-olds, it's everything in between. Anytime I give any kind of talk, even if I don't have fossils with me, I get someone who asks if Megalodon is still out there and and what's the evidence. And so, yeah,
this past year, I was doing a lot of Zoom calls into classrooms and groups that were doing remote homeschooling for the first time and stuff like that. And I spoke to students, thousands of students in all 50 states over the past year and a half over Zoom. And I can't remember the last time I wasn't asked about Megalodon. And crucially with this show, it wasn't just Megalodon is still alive, but they were saying Megalodon is still alive and scientists and the government are lying to you, don't trust them. And I can't draw a straight line from that to some of this COVID denialism we're seeing that's killing people, but I can tell you some of the same people are sharing messages from both.
Oh gosh. I remember that special because I remember how angry I got that I actually got off my butt and wrote a letter to Discovery.
Well, good. I'm glad you did.
Why are you doing this? When I first heard of it, I thought, oh my God, they found, how could they have, after all these, the ocean's so deep, who knows what could be there, right? Maybe it was real. And then I found out it was just a big fake out movie, and I flipped. And a lot of people that I was following at the time on a different social media, we were all like writing into Discovery saying, what is wrong with you? We want actual shark studies and facts. We don't want these mermaid megalodon fictions. And then of course, Jason Statham is making the Meg popular again. So
that Jason Statham movie is based on a series of books that I'm in.
Oh,
there's
really?
There's a David Shiffman marine biologist character in Meg 4 Hell's Aquarium. Yeah.
I wonder if he'll make movies. I think there's.
And honestly, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, things like that and Sharknado. I love stuff like that. I am, I wouldn't be teaching a class on sharks and pop culture if I wasn't into that kind of stuff. But the difference is that those are movies. They're not being billed as anything but fiction, right? And when you have something airing on a series that is known for documentaries and you do a fictional piece where the disclaimer goes up so quickly that people miss it.
Right.
That's a completely different thing.
Yeah. So it does seem to me the finding you had about the percentage of experts that actually have no publications, but they're presented as experts. And as someone who was in academia for much too long myself, I know that you do need to publish in order to, and it has to be peer reviewed and everything else. It just seems like such a disservice to the scientists and to the audience that this person that I'm being shown as an expert is actually just possibly like me, just an enthusiast who knows a little and doesn't know everything. Is that the same thing? We need the remote and the hit them in the pocketbook in order to get them to fix that as well? Because I know that Shark Fest has started to do a little bit more with their diversity. Although
it's not just a problem with that. It's all, but though obviously that's a huge problem. A big issue is that Shark Week gives people who are just absolute clowns the biggest stage in ocean science education, despite regularly saying wrong, not correct, not remotely true information that causes harm, and not apologizing and not saying they're going to do better. These people are not experts and are wrongly presented as experts. But also there are the people who are qualified experts are overwhelmingly white and male.
Right. Yeah, I do know that I've noticed over the years that they fall back on, they find somebody they like and the audience responds to, and they keep that person coming back. And I did notice this year the specials I watched, because I got a little discouraged. So I didn't watch them all like I normally do. A couple of my favorite underwater photographers were not in any of the specials. Like, wow, what did they do that got them kicked out?
Yeah.
Let's go to something more positive. Let's talk about the things that shark researchers are really focusing on, which you mentioned in your talk, are movement, if I get this right, movement, reproduction, I believe age and growth was the other
Age and
one.
growth, yes.
And not the telemetry. Could you?
The movement is telemetry.
Okay.
But the issue there was that many of the most common, now that includes unlimited minutes. Okay, cool. The issue there was that many of the most commonly used research methods by actual scientists you would never see on Shark Week. And that leads to, certainly, and also some of what's presented as science on Shark Week is nonsense. It's methods that would absolutely never be used by serious people in support of a serious question. There's some real science that appears on Shark Week, but a lot of what's presented on science is nonsense, and a lot of what's real science you'd never see. And what that leads to is people who watch not having a great idea of what our jobs are really like. And certainly a lot of what my day-to-day life is like, of formatting references or screaming at my R code, would not make for especially exciting television.
Right.
But in aggregate, it's a problem.
Lisa?
Yeah, I think, one of the things oh, sorry, I guess I'm probably,
You're there.
am I still frozen? Am I good?
No, you're fine.
Here.
Okay. Okay, good. So one of the things that, is a problem with that, it's not, a case of jealousy or why isn't my thing on there. It's, for me, I do, as a parent and as someone who does a lot of work with K through 12 students, especially around STEM education. So STEM is science, tech, engineering, and mathematics. One of the things we repeat a lot is, if you can see it, you can be it. And if you don't see if you want to be a shark scientist and you don't see someone like you doing that, and you're not like my kids who have a mom who's a shark scientist. That's real weird, right? There's not a lot of kids that have that, but or know me, right? If your only shark scientists that are the people you see on TV, you think that's the only possible thing you can do. Like, if you don't see anyone that looks like you, you're like, oh, well, then I can't do that career, right? And so the representation of the people that are doing the shark science is important, but also the science as well. Not everybody wants to do field work. Not everyone can do field work. And that's the most frequent thing we see on Shark Week, because that's, makes good TV. It's not the R code and the screaming at our computers. It's actually seeing these beautiful animals that the specials are named after. And so for someone like me who deals with chronic illness, it's not a good idea for me to be on a boat doing this kind of work. And I didn't even know you could do other things until I got to college and saw other shark scientists doing things in the lab, in museums, at aquaria. And so, for the future of shark science and shark conservation, we need lots of different folks doing lots of different things. And if you don't know those other things exist, you might not go after it. So, yeah.
You actually described me right there, because, like I told you, I got into sharks. I started to learn everything I could to get rid of my fear. But I never saw anybody that looked like me, obviously not the blue hair, but.
Let's say I got blue hair.
Oh, cool. It's a movement.
I used to have hair.
I never saw women out there doing these things. So I'm like, well, obviously being an ocean scientist is not something I would go into. And I went in a different direction. I can't be mad at myself about that, just because I might have been a terrible researcher, who knows? But that whole thing of little girls and people of color not seeing themselves doing these things that they can actually do, it does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And when you want people to go out and care about something like a shark, which, the media is portrayed as, even today, there was a news about all the sharks at Cape Cod now. Like it's super dangerous now. There's all these black tips. That's one of those things. I don't know how we can change, but I believe your studies like yours are a great way to start and to get that message out, the message that Dr. Shiffman that you've been putting out there for years. And again, let's talk a little more about positive before my last couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
What are the top sharks that are actually being researched? Because I know if you watch Shark Week, it's air jaws. And like you said, tiger sharks, hammerheads, and bull sharks.
Mm-hmm.
What are the ones that are actually that scientists are looking at right now?
I think David should answer. You were first author on that paper from last year that we did.
Yeah, this is the beauty of interdisciplinary collaborations, that Lisa's a paleontologist and I'm a feeding ecologist and conservationist, and we work together on a lot of stuff, which has been neat. But yeah, we looked at what's been presented the most by scientists at the American Elasmobranch Society conference that I mentioned earlier. And among other things, what species are mentioned the most. Certainly great whites are up there, but there are bonnethead sharks that are mentioned a lot in research, because that's a species that's both common off the coast of the southeastern US, but also one that does very well in captivity and is a good model species for a lot of things. There are lemon sharks. You do occasionally see lemon sharks in Shark Week in a show about tiger sharks when they're waiting for the tiger shark to show up. But lemon sharks are extremely commonly studied by a lot of work done at the Bimini Field Station. And my favorite shark species is the sandbar shark, #best shark. You hardly ever see in Shark Week shows, but it's one of the 10 most studied shark species in the world. Because of the Virginia Institute of Marine Science has long been studying sharks of the Chesapeake, and they're very common in the Chesapeake. So there are some species that you would never hear of from watching Shark Week that are really, really important, not only to their local ecosystems, but also to public understanding of science.
In your recommendations in your presentation, you said that Shark Week could do more diversity of experts and actual experts, less fear-based programming, more fact-based and positive programming and messaging, and then more actionable, sorry, I have a cat shark here, more actionable conservation content. So as someone who loves and respects sharks, what can I do, what can people like me do, the lay people, to help make this a reality? What can we support? Besides turning off Shark Week, which I can't do because I write about it. So,
and I don't think you should completely turn off Shark Week, right? There are some really good programs. My personal favorites are all in the Alien Shark series, which is great. Yeah, I mean, my favorite shark is the frilled shark, not the sandbar shark like David. And so I was so stoked when they pulled those up and featured them. So I think, I wouldn't want people to completely turn off Shark Week, right? But maybe if there was a way to be more choosy with your viewing.
Yeah, watch the good shows and don't watch the bad shows, and say that you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah,
But the part of the issue is, in terms of viewership, I analyzed trends in viewership a few years ago for data that we've never done anything with, because the answers are so boring. The shows that are watched the most are the shows that are on earlier in the week and earlier in the night. The show that's on Monday at 8 p.m. gets more viewers than the show that's on Monday at 10 p.m., regardless of what it's about. Because people have jobs, and no one's watching the Discovery Channel at 10 until 11:30 on a Monday night. Even I am fed up with Shark Week after 6 days of it. So the show that airs the first night gets the most views. So even without scrapping their bad content, by changing the order that it airs in, they could make a big difference. Though they should scrap the bad content too.
I noticed, I actually paid attention based on what you were all saying on Twitter this year and what I learned last year from following people like Dr. Jim Wharton, that these ones that are the popular, I'll say it, the Jackass Special, which was horrible. I hated every minute of watching that. When the guy got bit, I felt nothing. I felt bad for the shark because it was so stupid. But I know that people like Jackass, so they're going to watch these guys do Jackass type stunts in water with sharks, which is like, God, I hope no one copies them. I noticed that it was front loaded with all these, star, celebrity, and then we get to Friday, and I'm watching. I'm like, oh, here's an actual special, just following a scientist and a shark around, giving me some actual information, and I'm watching it because I'm a completist and I love Shark Week. So of course I'm plan on writing about it. So I watch it. But like you said, who's going to make it Friday night at 10 o'clock to watch an actual shark?
Yeah. I mean, they're throwing in the 5% of it that's actual good content almost as an afterthought at the end.
Yeah. And it's like, I sat there watching it going, I know they can do better because they're doing better. But like I showed you this earlier, so I've got my little toy that my friend gave me and put on my face that says "Here's back." It's really adorable. It's just a fuzzy little shark, and it has like fake shark Jaws music on it. It's cute, but I'm an adult, so I can compartmentalize and I understand this is a toy and it's not how sharks really behave. But a little kid might think, "I'm going to attack you with my shark," and then get a bad impression of a shark.
So, yeah, and again, because my kids are weird with Shark Mom, right? So when we're all home together and I was watching these episodes to do the coding and everything, I would usually, if it was a shark bite show, where there was going to be blood and reenactments, I would usually send them out of the room. But half the time I didn't have to because I saw what it was about and they're like, eh. But yeah. But then I watched one called American Shark that was, early 2000s. And it was just traveling along the U.S. coast and showing you what sharks were there and talking about them. And it was fascinating. Like, it was the first time I saw dogfish. I keep picking a dogfish for our friend Chuck. But, it was like spiny dogfish, the kind that people tend to dissect in anatomy labs and eat and things like that. It was the first time I had seen one on a special. And they're little, right? Mm-hmm. They're not these big, scary, charismatic sharks, but it was so cool to see them on there. And I think they had bonnet heads on there too. And, it wasn't all white sharks and showed the diversity of the sharks. And my kids wanted to watch it twice. Like, they loved it. They loved it. And again, I know that I've got my little nerds downstairs, right? They're like their mom, but they much prefer stuff like that. They're 8 and 11 and they know what they do want to watch and what they don't. They don't want to watch the bloody shark attack stuff.
Yeah, I have noticed they've decreased a couple of those. I was going to say, I noticed they've decreased a couple of those. They used to have like 4 or 5 of the I Was Prey specials, and now there were only 2 this year. Thank God. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
those shows are so almost silly because the shark bite incidents are so rare that you'll often see the exact same story told 2 or 3 times in the course of a week. And I feel so bad for those people because it's just they're just being exploited for relive the worst moment of your life on national TV. But in terms of these celebrity shows, they don't inherently bother me. As you said earlier, if that's, my favorite comedians on Shark Week, I watch everything Tiffany Haddish is in, I'll watch this. Sure. If the show is good.
Right.
If the celebrity is a hook, and the celebrity is used as a proxy for the audience to say, no, I don't know anything about what's going on with this. Will you, real expert, explain it to me and to the audience? That's fine. The problem is a lot of these people do jackass nonsense, and a lot of these people falsely claim they are experts. This year they had Dr. Pimple Popper host a show claiming like sharks don't get pimples. And that's mentioned in the first 3.5 seconds of the show. Right. And I don't know why the next words out of her mouth weren't, well, I'm an expert in some things, but not this, so I'm going to go home.
Yeah. Was it you that was, because I think it was you that was tweeting about quit showing the pimple parts of her job?
One of my wife's best friends is like obsessed with Dr. Pimple Popper videos. And I'll tell you, we all have our thing. I don't judge, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't either. That's not my thing either. Show me a shark, doing weird shark things is fine. Showing me gross, I don't even want to talk about it.
I don't get it.
For my final question, and first of all, I want to say appreciate so much for all of your time.
Certainly.
You're very busy, and really this has been very enlightening and wonderful. well, two last questions. One, you mentioned your favorite shark is a sandbar, and you said yours is
Frilled shark.
frilled shark, and then I have the mako.
Your mako.
Good choice.
The fastest shark, and they're pointy and they're kind of cute. But not that I would ever go up and pet one or anything. Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you before I forget. In terms of these shark diving expeditions, as I answered a Twitter of a famous shark photographer who's going to be on one of those trips where you pay $5,000 and they take you to, I think it's Guadalupe Island, to maybe see some sharks. Is that more harmful to sharks, or is that better for regular people like myself to actually get down there and safely, as much as possible, see the animals without affecting the animals?
Yeah, the answer here is it depends. These things are not inherently bad. They're not inherently good. It depends on how it's done. And a lot of places, there are a lot of operators who do a really good job at making sure the sharks are safe and the people involved are safe, and that the people learn useful things about shark science and conservation. Mm-hmm. Then there are also people who I have termed, and I'm trying to actually get into the peer-reviewed scientific literature, macho cowboy idiots, who
yes.
do things like ride sharks and hug and kiss sharks. Seriously, I swear to God.
I saw that video, yeah.
That's not good for anything or anyone. It's going to get people killed. It has gotten some people killed. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, the story is not idiot does something avoidable and stupid. The story is shark brutally kills adorable person.
Right.
And there are certainly, I would say do your homework. There are some mm-hmm. places that are not very good. It's usually the thing about the macho cowboy idiots is they make no attempt to hide it. So their materials will show videos of macho cowboy idiocy.
Like free swimming with the sharks and chumming the waters and things like that. Yeah, okay, good. I know what to avoid.
There are ways to do it in an environmentally not especially harmful way that's safe for humans.
For my final question, because I know you have to go, what are your Twitter handles, and also where can we read more about this study and your work, and any other shark experts and organizations like MIST that you'd like to promote? You could tell us where to find that. That'd be really appreciated.
Yeah. So I'm at Whitenack Lab on Twitter. So WHITENACK Lab. That's I kind of go up and down tweeting depending on where I am in the semester and what's going on. And I definitely want to put in a plug for MISS. So that's Minorities in Shark Science. You can also find them on Twitter, and they have a webpage if you'd like to donate. They are a wonderful organization that supports female identifying and non-binary folks that also identify as not white with their endeavors to become shark scientists. The Gills Club is another one that I love. I'm associated with them. They're run through the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, and they are specifically targeting girls who are interested in sharks, so they can see that there are a lot of us that do this work with live sharks, fossil sharks, and everything, and they do a lot of education work as well. So, yeah.
And David?
You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Why Sharks Matter, all one word, which is also the title of my upcoming book. Definitely want to plug MISS. They're absolutely great. misselasmo.org is the website, and the Twitter is at misselasmo. And if you're interested in learning more about actually useful things to do to protect sharks, Shark Advocates International is my go-to nonprofit. They also have a great social media presence at Shark Advocates on Twitter, and sharkadvocates.org is the website.
Great. Thank you again so very much. I really appreciate it.